Good morning, everybody. David Atkins, TI, here back with another video. Today I'm going to be talking about scripts. Robert Duncan's Project Soulcatcher Part 8. I'm going to be talking about scripts and reading the different scripts they use, like Wizard of Oz, Alice, um, different stuff like that, Fallen Angel scripts. And we're going to get into it right now. I'm going to share the screen. If you want to, I'm going to put my PayPal. I'm self-sufficient. Hardly ever ask for donations, but now I'm asking for donations. So if you'd like to donate, just go to my PayPal below in the description. Really appreciate that. I pay $20 a month from Zoom out of my own pocket to interview people. So anyway, here we go. Let's share the screen. Go right here. All right. So superstitions and mythologies are used to confuse and discredit and manipulate cultures or individuals using these communication weapons. Topics and takeaways of this chapter. Resistance is futile. Counter-resistant techniques. There are typical scripts and tricks used by the CIA and DoD during mind hacking interrogations, both with physical and remote renditions. Since the development of mind control technologies, the various signs of torture, interrogation, and personality programming have been adapted to remote renditions. The CIA scripts and tricks are common, cultural, specific themes. Some are tailored to an individual, but in a general way, they are based on popular culture. Hold on one second. Okay. Popular culture, the most common scripts are used are called The Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland, the Bible, but many newer ones have shown up in the last decade. Government projects are basing them on movies like The Blade Runner, Star Wars, Bourne Identity, Matrix, Inception. It's worth discussing the three most popular scripts that are used over and over again on thousands of people. Different kinds of stresses over time cause different effects on the human psychology. Some kinds of small stresses add over time. This is the concept behind the Chinese water torture. A small drop of water every second on the forehead will eventually drive the captive crazy. Other kind of tortures only last for duration before the mind adapts and filters it out. And some kinds of torture work best if the target knows beforehand what's going to be done to them rather than have it surprise them. Sensitization of stress helps the target want to tell the truth. This is often called stress conditioning. A person can be sensitized to or desensitized to certain kinds of stressors. If they are sensitized to lying, then the target's more likely to tell the truth during interrogation. If a person desensitized to lying, then they make for a good spy and can pass polygraphs with ease. The technique to sensitize the person of interest is to use shame, guilt, and by making every one of their fears come true. The prominent technique employed is to use the subject's mind against them. In the extreme, a person can be completely traumatized that they cannot handle everyday situations without shutting down. A movie called Clockwork Orange demonstrates this technique by the DoD behavior psychologist. The object is to destroy and kill the target with their own mind using remote influence. A year before the financial institutions here's a CIA project interview. A year before the financial institutions collapsed while I was being tortured, they told me the U.S. is going to suffer the worst financial a collapse it's ever seen in history. It will be the greatest robbery of Americans ever pulled off. I told people after I was released, but no one believed me. It came true. How did they do this? Do they really have that much power over world events? Omnipotence demonstrated through prophecy scripts, either by having foresight or be creating events later make the target believe in prophecy and fulfilling of the individual affecting the future to stop bad events from occurring. They can use V2K to start telling you stuff that they already know is going to happen and make you think you're a prophet. They can trick you into thinking God's talking to you, but you need to learn the difference in hearing from God and hearing from V2K, though. It's not the same. Alice in Wonderland script. Proportions and logic have fallen sloppy dead, and the white knights are talking backwards, and the red queen has lost her head. Jefferson Airplane. In all interrogation literature, the first steps are to confuse and disorient the detainee. Like in most of CIA scripts, there's a goal of confusion. Alice in Wonderland script is aptly named as it involves chasing the white rabbit in the beginning. Chasing the white rabbit is an information warfare term for leading the subject down a path of misinformation and information overload. During the script, this mind hackers increase the panic using a beta way enhancement and entrainment while conveying messages such as panic, hurry up, the end of the world's near, we're going to kill your family, we're frying your brain, we place bombs in your car, etc. Panic's used to confuse the target, but also make the target act irrationally and make bad decisions. People who panic can also be made to make choices through suggestion more easy. In the fairy tale, the White Rabbit's panicking for no apparent reason other than to get the Mad Hatter's tea party. Hurry up, I'm late, I'm late. The script is often used to discredit the target and make them sound insane. They often tell the target they lost their minds and have planted brain chip in them. The Cheshire Cat says to Alice, "You wouldn't be here unless you were mad." As the experimentation script progresses, so does the madness. This prepares the target to chat to Alice and Tammy chatterboxes, automated AI programs described in Chapter 3. The programs are imperfect, but their imperfections can be understood if one thought they were talking to an insane person. Most people do not know that the writer of Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll, was a physicist. There are many references to this intuitive quantum world in his writings, but in the CIA use of script, they go on to test perception warfare techniques. Remember, Alice becomes very small and large where logic and proportions make no sense. And to top off the script, becomes incomplete with the evil Cheshire Cat smile cloned onto the target. The White Knight talks backward trickery. This is one of the more complex tricks technology that the CIA uses in their Alice in Wonderland programs. It's Tammy stands for thought and mind interface. Alice stands for artificial linguistic, and then I don't know that we'll get to it. It should tell here in soon. It's meant to confuse the subject, discredit them if they tell anyone, make them believe an omnipotent force exists so they won't be hiding any secrets. It's truly an amazing and illusion trick. One of their best and most difficult to explain, it requires two features of wireless mind hacking tools, detections of sudden changes using radar triangulation, and Alice, chatterbox program. Later in the book, Alice will be described in detail, but it's basically a conversation bot used to invoke endless conversation with a human and can be used to induce internal conversation that tricks the person into thinking it's their own internal voice. I deal with it every day. The technology of synthetic telepathy utilizes words by the brain. It requires several repeated patterns of stimulus, entire sentences until comprehended consciously by the target's mind. The chatterbox can induce the neural feedback loop. When the individual walks backwards, the chatterbox will simply replay the last sentence or phrase phonetically backwards. The voice neurological communication signals often include the verbal cortex, which controls the voice muscles and their pattern. So the target will literally speak the sounds backwards out loud. People have difficulty believing they are just a biological computing entities, but this demonstration would convince anyone. The Wizard of Oz script. Wizard of Oz script, codenamed by the CIA later as the Kubark Manual, follows the movie script by characters: the Cowardly Lion, the Scarecrow with no brain, and the Tin Man with no heart, and the Wicked Witch. The characters are acted out in the cybernetic hive mind for experimentation and interrogation. The target becomes each character in search of the fraud wizard hiding behind the national security curtain. Dorothy, we're not in Kansas anymore. So basically, everybody's going down rabbit holes of misinformation, trying to find the real truth, trying to find who the wizard is behind the curtain. Is it the DOD? Is it the government? Is it my neighbors? Who is it? We're not in Kansas anymore. The niche personality simulations the targets put through enormous strains. The strange twist on the good cop, bad cop interrogation tactic. The strategy is like a subject's most likely to crack and tell their secrets under different emotional states and conditions. First comes the Wicked Witch, where they try to get the target to perform selfish, evil deeds. Next comes the Cowardly Lion. Paranoia induction into the target's mind creates this state. Then the Tin Man is the sociopathic personality with no heart and no care, who is angry at the world. The final stage is the Scarecrow with no brain, a typical brain jamming confusion tactic during the interrogation. This drawn out script even comes with impish like midget voices on helium, like the Lollipop Kids. I know y'all remember that. We represent the Lollipop Guild. The Lollipop. Okay, Angels and Demon script. The Angels and Demon script is the most popular one used on psychic warfare targets, so it's important to cover in detail. The script plays into religions, local cultures, and superstitions and mythology. 95% of the world is religious to some extent, so these techniques are very effective when combined with the voice of God weapons. Angels Don't Play This Heart, title of a book by Dr. Nick Begich. And I've read that book. I've got it on Kindle. I wish Kindle would let you share books because I would share it with y'all. First, while creating a program assassin, the operator can dilate the target's pupils, which makes the person look like a demon. The dilation occurs to dopamine and adrenal pump, purely stimulated through neural circuits. This is demonic possession script and gives the appearance that the person is possessed. It's used like all scripts to confuse the target about real technology and purposes. Even special effects, computer spooking viruses can make the person look possessed. HARP stands for High Altitude Aurora Research Project. Many of the people on mind control and electronic nervous system torture point their finger at this giant phased array used for global communications. See spooking viruses. And additionally, many will look like they're talking to themselves or have a split personality. I've done that talking to my V2K. During rapid fire interrogation techniques, the person is visited by 4 fallen angels or demons. In summary, if the psychic assassin fails to kill their targets, the target's saved by God's angels. They're usually Michael or Gabriel in CIA scripts for Christian faith. Then they basically are menticide into complacency and zombification, hoping ignorance is bliss as their memories fade of the torture. Project Monarch and Project Phoenix had similar objectives. The metaphor used is that the previous personality will be beaten out of the target and they will emerge as a deadly, beautiful bird of fly or a beautiful bird from the ashes. In the book 1984, they torture the target until they submit like a zombie and fill the ruling party's ideas into their heads. Side note on inserting and reinforcing ideas into a target. Psychic warfare training involves many techniques to fill people's heads with ideas and reinforce those ideas. Here are some of the tricks involved in doing it using an array of bioenergetic weaponry. Ideas are more championed if the person takes personal ownership to them. The techniques often used in strategy or consulting cells to get the recipient to believe they came to a conclusion. There are many factors in getting this person to buy, such as authoritative speaker, trust, calmness, etc. Many find religion and experiences very intense, often life changing. In fact, any unusual and intense experiences can alter a person's life view sometimes. Examples: Eureka and Miracle script. Religion is the favorite method of manipulation of all the mind hacking scripts. Using the voice of God, biocommunications such as microwave silent sound signals, and most will believe their God of the choices is speaking to them. Aliens or angels or demons. Another cognitive warfare strategy is to insert ideas that the targets use a first-person voice for an inner thought accompanied by induced goose flesh. This makes the person believe they came up with the idea and it makes it feel more important, like a eureka. Goose flesh is one of the biological parameters mentioned by the researchers at the Air Force Direct Energy Directorate. Let us look at some games played and the parallels of angels and demons script to biblical teachings. A tinnitus tuning fork sound, which has the mathematical property and amplitude called Gabriel's horn, is used in one of their scripts. The bell of his visits turns people into prophets. This trickery has worked on many targets of U.S. behavioral experimentation using the voice-to-skull technologies. 4 angels visit their target, use rapid-fire question techniques. Next, Lucifer or Satan used paranoia scripts, as it says in one of the many Bibles, to use their own mind to destroy their house, relationships, and possessions. Other aspects of the angels and demons CIA scripts include Satan's visit. During this part of mind control is a test of understanding what the target can maintain as truth when the operators tell the target that Satan only lies. Even when the target knows this, mind control is so powerful that sometimes the lies are believed. Sometimes the story of Job is used and the target is told that God is testing their faith through suffering and torture. The CIA DOD bastardized the Bibles for their trickery and human weapons effective testing. Side note, testimony from another Manchurian candidate, programmed assassin in the making. They forced me to read the Bible, and Revelations in particular. It was obvious they were trying to force a religion on me. They made constant references to the Judgment Day and fallen angels. I see why the Department of Defense calls these voice of God weapons. They tried to give me a Jesus complex of persecution. They tried to make me believe I was a prophet. They tried every technique to turn me into a Manchurian candidate to attack political and military targets in the United States. When I refused, they tried suicidal hypnosis and suggestion to dispose of me. Luckily, I wasn't smart enough to know their game. If a person says anything just like I told you to authorities, they would get locked up. I got a hold of one of the CIA's original project documents dating back to 1953 that clued me in on that they would crash the financial markets in order to rob the world while the people focused on terrorism. But is it difficult to believe that anything they told me? They were right about the financial market collapse 2 years before it happened. Few names are mentioned in this book to protect the innocent document to which this person is referring to, called Project Artichoke. He told our researchers the target's names whom he was being programmed to assassinate. They were active military and political figures. The original documents for Project Artichoke said they could not kill any political figure in America or any other country, but it did not say that high-ranking generals could be targets. The mind programmers seem to have diverged from their original directive since 1953. A new type of coup d'etat is in the works. Several of our interviews said they were grabbed on the Day of Atonement, October 29th or 31st, which is Satanic holiday. This too plays into the Satanic cult scripts. Watchers, fallen angels, illegal surveillance and manipulation. The mind hackers also often call themselves watchers. The watchers or Grigori are a group of fallen angels told of in the Bible of Apocrypha, who mated with mortal women, giving rise to the race of hybrids known as the Nephilim, who are also mentioned in Genesis 6:4. The Watcher appears in biblical Apocrypha in the first and second book of Enoch and Jubilees. The word Grigori derives from the Slavonic second book of Enoch. According to the book of Enoch, the Watchers numbered a total of 200, but their only leaders are named, and they were all in 200, who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon. They called it Mount Hermon because they had sworn and bound themselves by mutual imprecations on it. Enoch 6. Research interviews. What struck in accord with our interviews is that we tasked several targets to ask their handlers how many psychic remote viewers there were in the organization. 3 of them were told 200, a reference to a biblical apocrypha, but obviously untrue. All right, so we got to go back to 31. So 31 is imprecations, means maledictions, curses. Secret societies often use this technique of mutually assured destruction in the initiation, such as the Yale Skull and Bones. They divulge their deepest secrets so that breaking the oath can have consequences. The intelligence community has similar techniques. Okay, Gabriel, literally strong man of God, is an angel who serves as a messenger from God. His first appears in the book of Daniel from the Hebrew Bible. Islam further believes he was the medium through whom God revealed the Quran and sent messages to most prophets, if not all, revealing their obligations. He's called the chief of the 4 favored angels in the spirit of truth. In some views, Gabriel is the same as the Holy Spirit. The big 3 warring religions, Christian, Hebrew, and Muslim, are not the only ones who have a messenger for God. Even the Romans and Greeks had Hermes and Mercury. Additionally, in Catholicism, Gabriel is the patron saint of the messengers. Those who work for broadcasting telecommunications, such as radio and television, remote sensing, and postal workers. Michael's function is to open the gates of justice to the just. It's also said that the resurrection, Gabriel will sound the trumpet at which the graves will open and the dead will rise. Pseudepigraphy. According to the non-canonical book Enoch 9:1 through 2, 1 and 2, Gabriel, along with Michael, Raphael, Uriel, and Suriel, hear the cries of humanity under the terrain of the Nephilim. It was their beseeching of the ancient days, Yahweh, that promoted them to call God Enoch to prophethood. After Enoch informed the watchers of their fall from grace, Yahweh sent to the angels their complete various tasks. Gabriel's was to go to the biters, to the reprobates, to the children of fornication, to the offspring of the watchers from among men, bring them forth and excite them one against each other. Let them perish under mutual slaughter, for the length of the days shall not be theirs. Enoch 10:13. And so Gabriel instigated wars among the giants, the children of the watchers. Enoch 49 states that Gabriel presides over all that is powerful. Gabriel is regarded with the exact same respect by Muslims as of all prophets, and upon saying his name, referring to him as a Muslim, repeats, peace be upon him. Gabriel's primary tasks are to bring messages from God to his messengers. As in Christianity, Gabriel is said to be the angel that informed Mary of how she would conceive Jesus. The Gabriel first appears in the book of Daniel, setting of the story of Babylonian captivity. The Jewish leader Daniel ponders the meaning of several visions he's experienced in exile, when Gabriel appears to him with a message about the end of the days. And it came to pass, when I, even Daniel, had seen the visions, that I sought to understand. And behold, there stood before me an appearance of a man, and I heard the voice of a man between the banks of Ulai, who called and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. So he came near where I stood. And when he came, I was terrified and fell upon my face. But he said to me, understand, son of man, for the vision belongs to the time of the end. Gabriel's horn refers to the tradition identifying the archangel Gabriel with the angel who blows the horn to announce judgment day, associating with infinite with the divine. And you see that the mathematical function is found in the amplitudes of bells and the shapes of horns used at sporting events. Many targets of electronic harassment have stated they heard tinnitus, and it follows this curve before communication. I know I get a fluttering in my ear usually before communication, like a fluttering against my eardrum. It goes. Narrated Asia. Al-Harith and Ben Hisham asked the prophet, "How does the divine inspiration come to you?" He replied in all these ways: "The angels sometimes come to me with a voice which resembles the sound of the ringing bell. When the state abandons me, I remember what the angel has said, and this type of inspiration is the hardest on me. And sometimes the angels come to me in the shape of a man and talks to me. I understand and remember what he says. Many targets hear a 3.3 hertz pulse ringing in the ears of tinnitus, which sounds like a bell ringing and follows a logarithmic curve. Tinnitus might be a side effect of the audio cortex neurons being induced for spontaneous firing. It might be a method to associate a sound to a torture sequence, a Pavlov effect, thereby intensifying the torture and lasting damage effects on target psychology. In addition, the associations with particular sound helps bring back the focus of the target's mind about the external signal and trains it to listen again. The spy spook industry loves this quote, used to justify tongue in cheek their disinformation campaign. I heard Eliah's apostle saying, "The angels descend on the clouds and mention this or matter decreed in heaven. The devils listen to stealthily such matter, come down to inspire the soothsayers with it, and the latter would add to it 100 lives of their own." This technique's called the method by counterintelligence and strategic domestic deception units. For example, talk about mind control technology, then aliens. The human mind will assume everything is untrue because they don't believe in aliens or whatever is not a popular belief. Volume 4, Book 54, number 48. I heard Elijah's apostle saying, "Angels of mercy do not enter a house where there's a dog or a picture of a living creature." Once Gabriel promised the prophet that he would visit him, but Gabriel did not come. Later on, he said, "We angels do not enter a house which contains a picture of a dog." He's correlating the Bible and the Quran, then he's showing what kind of scripts they use, kind of based off that. Clandestine officers kill, poison dogs, steal personal pictures, or erase them from computers as standard practice. Agents poison dogs before home invasions. Isolation is important so that the person internally focuses on the external neural messaging. Brain entrainments to really be effective require that sensory stimulation be minimal from their peripheral sensors, such as sensory deprivation tanks. And here's another one. Allah's apostle said, "Your ordinary fire is one of 70 parts of the hellfire." Someone asked, "Oh, Allah, apostle, this fire would have been sufficient to torture the unbelievers." Allah's apostle said, "The fire has 69 parts more than the ordinary fire. Each part is as hot as this worldly fire." One can conceive 70 kinds of fire, such as microwave energy used for tortures by the U.S., lasers, rug burn, friction, ultrasound, oxidation, rashes from viruses or bacteria, frostbite, chemical burns, radiation, and muscle burns from stress positions. Allah's apostle said, "During your sleep, Satan knots 3 knots at the back of the head of you, and he breathes the following words at each knot: The night is long, so keep on sleeping. If that person wakes up and celebrates the praises of Allah, then 1 knot is undone. When he performs the ablution, the 2nd knot's undone. When he prays, all the knots are undone. And he gets up in the morning lively and gay. Otherwise, he gets up dull and gloomy." Later, the reader will learn about Satan, silent assassination through adaptive networks, weapon system of behavioral psychology. The Russian Leda machine causes excessive sleep through radio frequency transmission. The U.S. uses dread, depression, and despair in trauma-based conditioning. And he said Satan circulates in the human mind as blood circulates in it. And I was afraid that Satan might throw an evil thought or something into your hearts. This is the way mind control works, by inserting thoughts into the human population. And I'm going to stop there. Next week, we're going to start at Sleeping Beauty script. Notice what he said right here. He said something very important up here, what I noticed. He said, oh, isolation is important so that the person internally focuses on the external neural messaging. Brain entrainments to be really effective require that sensory stimulation be minimal from the peripheral sensors, such as sensory deprivation tanks. And that's all I got today. Sorry there wasn't much commentary with it. I'm experiencing heavy V2K right now, so I'm trying to ignore it and just read and get it done. They're mocking me. They're saying stuff after I say it, laughing, and it's, my handler's voice is laughing. They always use that to laugh. But anyway, I'm gonna stop sharing right now and hope everybody has the best holiday they can have as a target. And if you're not a target, I hope you have a good holiday. And I hope you use an open mind and see that this stuff is very real. God bless all TIs. Oh yeah, I'm gonna put my PayPal in the description if anybody would like to donate. Very much appreciated. God bless. Good morning, everybody. David T.I. here. Man, it's been a rough week. I got my V2K talking about my grandparents, talking about, yeah, don't you wish your grandparents were here and all that. But they know stuff like that aggravates me. Then they interrogate me. David, why'd you do that? What are you doing? They're doing all kinds of stuff like that with V2K, running all kinds of scripts and stuff. And speaking of scripts, today we're going to talk about scripts, like Sleeping Beauty script. They name these scripts Disney characters and Bible stuff and religious stuff. Different names, like Satan, silent assassination through adaptive networks, Tammy, thought and mind interface, Alice is artificial linguistic, and it's going to talk about Alice. I think we're getting to it today. If not, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure in this book it gets to Alice then. So I'm going to start with the Sleeping Beauty script. How Sleeping Beauty script, sleeper agents and disposable CIA agents. How are remote sleeper agents trained? Remote sleeper agents are the same as remote controlled proxy soldiers, which is done through brain signal cloning programming, behavior condition, and the radio frequency hearing effect. Creating depressing or using people who are depressed is traditional because they have less brain activity in the frontal lobes, which are used to control will and motivation. This makes them more susceptible to brainwashing and programming techniques. Lack of sleep breaks down the will too. You hear that? That's why they sleep deprive us. The idea is to take control. Creating depression or using people who are depressed traditional because they have less brain activity, which are used to control will and emotion. Then makes them more susceptible to brainwashing and programming techniques. Lack of sleep breaks down the will too. The idea is to take control of the sense of self and the will of the person. Excessive stress and torture causes brain changes from cortisol in the frontal lobe, and prolonged pain shrinks the brain. In physical renditions, a brainwashing technique called the sleeper room, the necessary torture and stresses are produced, followed by massive sleep. Sleep reinforces the programming and lessens into long term behavioral changes. The same can be done with remote renditions. We're going to go to a side note real quick. Interviewer, how are you activated and how are your instructions communicated? Sleeper agent, preconditioned tones, cell phone, TV, radio, face to face, computer, microwave hearing effect with Morse code or voice payphones, etc. It's random each time so that they can't easily be caught without vast resources. Question, how often are you contacted? Answer, once or twice a month. But since President Obama took office, it had been less. What have you been asked to do? Answer, I won't tell you everything. Generally, the mission seems to have little purpose. For example, I'll be asked to go to a location, strike up a conversation with people around me, and use specific phrases. Other time, it is to give them names of government officials who are rumored to be corrupt. Also, give them ideas of infrastructure weaknesses and clever silent assassination plots. Brainstorm from various people and personalities. Obviously, they're looking to entrap people or blackmail them. Wow. Question, why do you do what you're told? Answer, if you've been through the torture programs, you wouldn't want to ask that question. I don't want to be tortured and I don't want my family killed as they have threatened many, many times. I've met many targets uh, who have thought this, have thought this way. I don't want to be tortured again and I don't want my family killed. All right, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs script. The fable. Snow White eats the poison apple, falls into a slumber. The Seven Dwarfs are the scripts and Egan vectors of segmentation of emotional control and personality simulations. The mind hackers generally use Disney themes to name their illegal clandestine programs and torture and brainwashing since the 90s. It's debatable whether the apple was the forbidden fruit in the Adam and Eve biblical tales. Eigenvectors are a mathematical construct to describe perfect orthogonal vectors in variable space for correlation. This can be color perception of the eyes or emotional centers of the brain. Eigenvectors are used in many fields such as product marketing. Our interest is in using it for emotional analysis of humans. It appears there are 7 major vectors in emotional centers of the brain that give rise to the spectrum of emotions, and just how the 3 cones of the retina give rise to other spectrum of the rainbow and perception. This is why the program is called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. If you notice, you got sleepy, sneezy, dopey. So you got all them seven drawers, so you can imagine what goes on in them scripts. Other scripts. The power is in the scripts, the mind hacking informant said. There are numerous other scripts that are used on remote mind control projects. They would fill volumes, but we would just mention a few so the reader can understand where the inspiration comes from. The power is in the scripts. The technology is merely the means. Humpty Dumpty script is about breaking the target's mind to pieces, and all the king's horses and men can't put him back together again. This is another program to crack the human mind. The agents get their ideas for scripts from tales and movies, while other movies are inspired by victims of government misdeeds, dishonor, and disgrace. The Matrix inspired a version of Jesus complex that one man will save the world. The Borg and Star Trek enslaves every living creature using cybernetics. Alien invasions have been popular since the 1940s, and of course, the book 1984 inspired an all seeing eye in Big Brother. The reader should get the point. Here's discussion questions to think about. What purposes do scripts serve? For example, if a target describes the Bible script being done to them, any observer would just assume they had read the Bible and is having a psychotic break from reality. Can you think of any other benefits to this kind of trickery? Some targets will believe that an alien or omnipotent force is behind this technology and evil. The reason they will see all these connections between their experience and culture events. In the next session, we'll study some of the Pentagon counter-resistant techniques. One is to make the target believe that the handlers are omnipotent and know everything. The scripts also serve to misdirect the anger of the target away from the U.S. government and to some ghost, alien, or demon. The scripts keep the program soldiers on track and a repeatable way to train them to do their illegal work. A free-for-all would be less effective, and the effects might not be reproducible. The ABCs of enhanced interrogation and torture. There is no rest for the wicked, a rough boy, CIA interrogator and brainwashing expert said to me during sleep deprivation experiments. An interviewed American Caucasian male, torture and behavior modification experiment 2006. Experimental interrogation and behavior modification techniques. You do what they taught us. Yeah. You do what they told you. You do what they torture. Rage Against the Machine. So, experimental interrogation and behavior modification techniques. Physical torturers in the U.S. have traditionally been called rough boys. Euphemisms in the DoD and CIA are traditional. Changing the language of torture, such as modern day enhanced interrogations or experimental interrogation, helps the general populace sleep at night without knowing what they are really supporting. Extraction of information involves breaking down the will of the subject, confusing and tricking them. Let's quickly cover some of the basics. The use of sodium pentanol, LSD, BZ, henbane, scopolamine, and many other drugs created by the TSS chemical division helps to confuse the target or instill fear in them. During physical or remote renditions, making time appear to pass faster through sleep deprivation and memory erasing techniques allows the interrogator to use falsely dated newspapers, sleep alteration and isolation, and accelerated clocks to try to get to the subject to brag about an event before it actually happens. They include trickery and false confessions verbally. Using voice transformation and video altered tapes helps in this process. In a sleep deprived state or drug induced state, haze doppelgangers of people whom the target recognizes are used to extract information. Doppelganger is the mythological shapeshifter taking on appearances of other people. In psychology, it is the illness where a person believes that the real people have been possessed or substituted. In information extraction, it is really done by mask and voice transformation using speech samples of the real people. And I've been through this. Speech samples of the real people. I hear my ex-wife's voice. I hear my sister's voice. Man, in wireless renditions, potentially people around the target are also being mind controlled. It can even be done through spoofed emails. This is also called spoofing in information warfare. See spoofing and authority and trust level hacking. And I'm gonna go down here to the side note. So we got 33. So where was 33 at? 33, the ABCs of enhanced interrogation and torture, taken from the released Pentagon documents. All right, now 34 is right here. A rough boy is what it says. Rough boys is an old term for torturers and interrogators. George Bush and Dick Cheney helped start a school of rough boys. George Bush even redefined the English word torture during his regime to enhance interrogation. The altering of the common understanding of a word form a mass neurolinguistic programming. All right, now we're going to go to the all right, so it's important. I'm gonna read this last thing again. Hold on. In information extraction, it is really done by mask and voice transformation using speech samples of the real people. In wireless renditions, potentially people around the target are being mind controlled. It can even be done through spoofed emails. This is also called spoofing in information warfare. In communication warfare, a similar technique of voice transformation is used to misdirect enemy commanders by faking mobile phone or other communications to their command structure. In physical renditions and interrogations by the DoD, CIA suffocation, burning, and other pain techniques are applied. No-touch torture employs analogs of these barbaric methods. In human trials, the CIA is comparing the effectiveness of remote technology techniques with the traditional physical torture methods. Suffocation techniques, waterboarding, cellophane wrap over the face, throat grabs, supergluing nostrils, etc. Burning techniques, ADS, active denial of service, microwave weapons, hot needles in the flesh, hot pokers and the equivalent, pain inducing techniques, soft spots such as eardrums, groin, other nerve pressure points. Fear induction techniques, fear up harsh techniques including threatening dogs, insects, dropping a pit of boiling water, dropping in a pit of boiling water threats to kill their family, killing a person in front of them, or mock killings of their family and mock abductions. Sexual humiliation is pretty common in breakdown techniques. Here we have a quote from an interview of a United States citizen torture subject. We are showing you a video of us abducting and killing your mother, they would say. At first, I gave it some plausibility, but then I noticed they were just showing me a clip from a television movie. Malodorance is yet another non-lethal weapon classification in the Navy. Interesting to note that the smell of schizophrenia, according to one psychiatric publication, is burned rubber. The smell is used in the remote mind control renditions too, but also includes ammonia and vinegar. Offensive induced taste tests like pencil lead, lemons, helps to modify the diet of the target as part of the breakdown and torture process. See Pentagon item T below for interrogation methods. Offensive images include visual images against the detainee's beliefs and values. For example, heterosexuals will be tortured by homosexuals, and vice versa. U.S. CIA recruits calling themselves Satanists don't pull any punches in these remote torture renditions. There will one day spring from the brain of science a machine or force so fearful in its potentialities, so absolutely terrifying that even the man, fighter, who would dare torture and death in order to inflict torture and death will be appalled and so abandon war forever. Hundreds of techniques were declassed, and inventor of the electric chair and the light bulb said that. I'm going to repeat it again. There will one day spring from the brain of science a machine or force so fearful in its potentialities, so absolutely terrifying that even man, the fighter, who will dare torture and death in order to inflict torture and death, will be appalled and so abandon war forever. Thomas Edison. Hundreds of techniques were declassified in 2002 by the Pentagon to Congress. The Navy wanted these to remain top secret. The authors are going to list a few of them and give real examples from government torture projects whom we have interviewed. Independent investigators have classified these techniques from interviewing over 650 targets, but they did not know the names of the techniques used until they were released by the Pentagon to Congress in 2002. The additional comments are in red and gray, and they were not included in the techniques copied from the DoD non-form documents, which are in black. Side note, some original declassified Pentagon documents. And I'm going to read this. Sorry, I got a cold. I'm going to read this in the best I can. Okay, it says interrogation techniques. The use of techniques A through X is subject to the general safeguards as provided below, as well as specific implementation guidelines to be provided by the appropriate authorities. Specific implementation guidance respect techniques is provided in the Army Field Manual. Further implementation guidance in respect techniques will need to be developed by the appropriate authority. Of the techniques forth below, the policy of certain techniques should be considered to the extent those policy aspects reflect the views of other major U.S. partner nations. Directs asking straightforward questions. Removal of incentive, providing a reward or removing a privilege and above or beyond that are required by the Geneva Convention from the detainees. Caution, other nations that believe that the databases are entitled to prisoner of war protections may consider that provision and rendition of religious something the Quran, the Bible are protected under international law. Although the provisions of the Geneva Convention are not applicable to the interrogation of unlawful combatants, consideration should be given to their views prior to the application of the techniques. Emotional love, playing on a love detainee for an individual or group. Emotional hate, playing on the hatred a detainee has for an individual or group. So, therefore, what they're saying is playing on the hatred a detainee has for individual groups. So I might be trying to get this person to talk about somebody and be like, yeah, you know, you hate this person. He done this, just to strike up a conversation and get you to talk about somebody you hate. Fear up harsh, significantly increasing the fear level in the detainee. Fear up mild, moderately increasing the fear level in the detainee. Reduced fear, reducing the fear level in the detainee. Pride and ego up, boosting the ego of a detainee. So boosting the ego, talking up on them and bragging on them and all that. Classified by the Secretary of Defense. Okay, let's see what this says. Pride and ego down, attacking or insulting the ego of a detainee not beyond the limits that would apply to a prisoner of war. Prisoners of war who refuse answers may not be threatened, insulted, or exposed to any unpleasant or disadvantaged treatment of any kind. Other nations that believe the detainee are entitled to POW protections may consider this technique inconsistent with the provisions of Geneva. Although the provisions of Geneva are net applicable to the interrogation of unlawful combatants, consideration should be given to these views prior to application of the techniques. Futility, invoking the feeling of futility of a detainee. We know all, convincing the detainee interrogator knows the answer to the question that he asked the detainee. Establishing your identity, convincing the detainee that the interrogated has mistaken the detainee for someone else. Repetition approach, continuously repeating the same question to the detainee while the interrogation periods of normal duration. File endosser, convincing detainee that the interrogator has a damning and inaccurate file which must be fixed. Mutt and Jeff, a team consisting of a friendly and harsh interrogator. The harsh interrogator might employ the pride and ego down technique. Cessation. Other nations believe that the prisoners of war protections applied to detainees may view this technique as inconsistent with Geneva. Rapid fire, questioning in rapid succession without allowing the detainee to answer. Staring at the detainee to encourage discomfort. I don't know what that's called. Change of scenery up, removing the detainee from the standard interrogation setting generally to a location more pleasant but no worse. Change of scenery down, removing the detainee from the standard interrogation and placing it into a setting that may be comfortable would not constitute a successful change in environment quality. Dietary manipulation, changing the diet of the detainee, no intended deprivation of food or water, no adverse medical or cultural effect, and without the intent to deprive subject of food and water. Unclassified, environmental manipulation, according to the environment to create moderate discomfort, adjusting temperature, or inducing unpleasant smell. Conditions would not be such that they would injure the detainee. Detainee would be accompanied by an interrogator at all times. Sleep adjustment, adjusting the sleeping times of the detainee. Reverse sleep cycles from night to day. The technique is not sleep deprivation. This technique is not sleep right. Convincing the detainee that individuals from a country other than the United States are interrogating him. False flag. Isolation. Isolating the detainee from the other detainee while still complying with the basic standards of treatment. The use of isolation as interrogation techniques requires detailed implementation instructions, including specific guidelines regarding the length of isolation, medical and psychological review, and approval for extensions of the length of the isolation by the appropriate level in the chain of command. This technique is not known to have been generally used for interrogation purposes for longer than 30 days, though nations that believe that detainees are subject to prisoner of war protections may view use of this technique inconsistent. Memorandum for the Commander, U.S. Southern Command. Subject: Counter-resistant techniques in the title in the War on Terrorism. I have considered the report of the working group that I directed to be established January 15, 2003. I approve the use of specific counter-resistant techniques. The technique I authorize are lettered A to Z and set out. These techniques must be used with all the safeguards. Use techniques anyway, so. In your views, requiring, okay, good enough work for the government. Declassify on April 2013 is what it says. Okay, so I'm going to read these and then I'm going to end it for today. Emotional love, psychological interrogation strategies, very important. Emotional love, playing on the love of a detainee for so I'm going to do it again and just give these examples. Emotional love, playing on the love a detainee has for an individual. Example, using threats of killing their loved ones, or in brainwashing using imagery, love to motivate a Manchurian candidate. Example, President Reagan's shooter. Emotional hate, playing on the hatred a detainee has for Visual, using hate to divide and concur and fight, incite inflicting groups or start wars. Also make targets isolate themselves from negative vocabulary. Targets often accuse a racial or religious group for their suffering. Fear up harsh, significantly increasing the fear level in a detainee. Example, panic. We are going to kill you. We're going to destroy your life, make you homeless. Threats of more torture, making the target paranoid and believe everyone's out to get them and in on their torture. G, reducing fear, reducing the fear level in the detainee. We will let you go, creating false hope that the target's been pardoned. Torture sequence stops for a few hours or days. H, pride and ego, boosting the ego of a detainee. These examples were gathered from real interviews of tortures and brainwash. However, this is rare amongst the targets that we interview. The idea is to constantly try to boost the ego of the target. You are the smartest guy we know. You're the one that will beat us, or you're the national treasure. You're the best thing, such and such, we've ever seen. This also includes the Jesus complex or prophet complex for other religions. Pride and ego down. Examples: you're ugly. You're too dumb to stop us. You're fat. This is the most common type of verbal breakdown detained. I mean, utilized. J, futility, invoking the feeling of futility of a detainee. Examples: we are all powerful and control the media and politicians. No one can stop us now. Other examples are on how shielding techniques don't work very well against biocommunication weapons. Resistance is futile. We know all. Convincing a detainee the interrogator knows the answers to questions he asked the detainee. Examples: this is similar to omnipotence techniques by showing the detainee they have done some basic research into their background they establish an all-knowing eye. They use this to demonstrate that they know more than they really do. The objective is to get the detainee to tell more about the events surrounding the information that they provided, then walking them back through their history by short-term memory erasure using sleep deprivation and other methods like drugs. The CIA thinks these techniques are top secret, but they have been published in every language. This book is focused on remote neural rendition, so we compare the physical captive techniques with how they map to other kinds of tools. Later in this book, the reader will learn about scripts and tricks. Omnipotent scripts are the most complex and expensive to do on a remote rendition target. Scaling the economic efficiency of the script requires a torture, interrogation, brainwashing schools to reuse them. This is partially interesting technique, so we will dive into the psychological trickery, understanding that all magic, illusions, and trickery work by physics and psychology, and helps the human target understand how the DoD misdirection and deception works. This technique in the media hacking world baffles even the cleverest people. They often call it media stalking or other forms of stalking instead of the correct term of appearing omnipotent to the target. So the target, not understanding the billions of dollars to develop this weapon and techniques over time, sees the scripts as too big to be done by a small group of human beings. The technique is supposed to appear like a superintelligence. See the God and Alien scripts as cover stories and later in this book. The idea is to give keywords and phrases to the target through neural communication or operatives that are common to the target's culture, and thereby it will appear mass-controlled news media frequently enough. This helps gaslight the target. They will believe that the television, newspaper, and everyone is speaking directly to them in their situation. Some of the most successful Manchurians in history have been used by the love plus media stalking to commit crimes. This is more commonly described as the unusual suspects, After their movie where everything is understood towards the end, many believe it's prophecy to the massive organization which the information is presented in the order of correlations in the human mind. While cybernetic hive minds and superintelligent structures are being developed, see swarm theory and Beowulf packs, the brainwashing and programming technique of omnipotence does not fully utilize this form of technology yet, but it will. Establish your identity, convincing the detainee that the interrogator has mistaken the detainee for someone else. Some victims of government experimentation and practice say that the conversations pretend that they have mistaken them for a terrorist or spy by the same name, and they need to update the dasha on the target. Repetition approach. Continuously repeating the same question to the detainee. This is also used in brainwashing and programming, often called psychic driving when expressed as a statement. Many targets say that they are asked the same question over and over. The technique is often combined with rapid fire questions, multiple interrogators asking the same question. Files and dosers, convincing the detainee that the interrogator has a damning and inaccurate file which must be fixed. Using a target's guilt complex and a complete list of confessions of shame is acquired. This is used for further information gathering about the target. O. Mutt and Jeff, also known as good cop, bad cop. Several targets have been convinced their handler is trying to help them while others are out to get them. This is supposed to build trust. Rapid fire questioning. Confuse the target's mind with who might be trying to hold back information and catch them lying in inconsistencies. Very old school techniques are still applied in high tech remote renditions too. Q. Silence. Staring at the detainee to encourage discomfort. Example, stalking, invasion of privacy while she's using the restroom. V2K. We are watching you. She's looking right at us. In remote renditions, this is applied by showing images of eyes in their shared visual workspace in addition to the statements. Change the scenery up. He didn't put no example. Change the scenery down. Most targets are convinced through torture stimulus that if they keep traveling or moving, they can get away from the torture equipment. I went through that. 12 states in 6 months. This keeps them isolated and changes the scenery up and down. Dietary manipulation, tricking targets into believing their food was poisoned by ground operatives and altering their hunger desires accomplishes this technique. U. Environmental manipulation. The sense of hot or cold is induced into the target and is used in combination with techniques R and S, which would be change the scenery up and down. V. Sleep adjustment, adjusting the sleeping times of the detainee. For example, reversing sleep cycles from night to day. This technique is not sleep deprivation. Almost all of our interviewed targets describe uncontrollable drop-dead sleepiness or the reverse. Used to research Russian LiDAR machine, for example, used to isolate the target from being able to work and can change the time perception of time. Been through that one too. Been through a bunch of these. W. False flag. Convincing the detainee the individuals from countries other than the United States are torturing and interrogating him. Examples. This technique is used beyond tricking people which country's doing it to them. Victims of government of torture are tricked into believing neighbors, bosses, and even agencies are responsible. Isolation. Isolating the detainee from the other detainees. Example, self-explanatory, but in remote renditions, this is done through paranoia, induction, pain, emotional control, and Alice chatterboxes. And the internet's a bearer of remote rendition as victims have formed support groups. All of this was released by the Pentagon despite un-American values of many grotesque human beings hiding in the crevices of national security. The reader should also look up the torture memos that have since been called sloppy legal reasoning and illegal. They were also greatly disputed by the CIA Act directors, but thanks to the great Obama, a real America sent on a more intentional, internationally legal and moral path, they were released. I don't know if I agree with that, but okay, that's his opinion. Okay, what made you ask for political asylum in the U.S.? Interview with a Chinese dissident. Here's an interview side note. What made you ask for political asylum in the U.S.? Response, I believed at the time the Chinese government was torturing me using some kind of mind control radar weapon. I realize now that it was the U.S. tricking me to come over and spill dirty secrets about the Chinese government. I was used for U.S. propaganda on international news. Every civilization and country has had its history of torture tools and techniques. Some of these gruesome devices can be viewed in the Torture Museum in Amsterdam, Netherlands. The downside of the torturing in modern civilizations is the public reaction to the visual evidence of pain, death, and blood. The United States has overcome this problem with the use of neurological weapons and invisible pain rays. And next week we will pick up looking at some constant torture methods. So I hope everybody is having the best weekend they can. Um, man, I'm just trying to, stay positive, try to stay in the Word of God, stay prayed up, stay praised up, um, and make it through all this, street theater, V2K being done on me, weapons, tax, and all that. Which I have to say, something about this mushroom tincture is helping in this very much so. So anyway, God bless all TIs, and I hope that y'all have the best weekend y'all can. And man, I hope y'all can find ways to deal with your targeting instead of waiting on these lawsuits and stuff to solve it for you. God bless.